We are joined now by Frank Isola. He's at the Frank Isola on Twitter. You can watch him on ESPN, read him at The Athletic, listen to him on SiriusXM. Frank, thanks for getting up early with us. What is the vibe on the Yankees as we start off? Major League Baseball obviously underway, but we know, unfortunately, for New York area sports fans, you may have the two worst teams in the NFL that you're having to watch every weekend with the Bills. Not the Bills. Fortunately, the Bills are doing great. But with the Giants and the Jets, how much of that sort of interest now has been shifted into the Yankees bucket, and how much nervousness is there?
Well, it's the same thing all the time, right, Clay? Last week, Gio Urshela hit a grand slam, and then Stanton hit a grand slam the other day. And everyone gets all excited about offense, and ultimately it comes down to whether or not you have the pitching to win. And in Game 1, they had the pitching with Garrett Cole. The pitching has not held up the last two games. The relievers haven't held up, and that it always comes down to pitching. Everyone gets excited when they see the balls flying out of the park. What did they have, 11 home runs in their first three games? They had 31 runs in their first three games, but you still have to have the pitching. It's almost like the Yankees never learned their lesson. They're not out of it yet. All they have to do is win two games. But Tampa's been the better team. Remember, Tampa went 8-2 during the regular season against the Yankees. So now they're 10-3 against them. So they've had their number.
Let's go to the NBA for a couple minutes here. You have covered the NBA for a long time, and the NBA Finals have not cut through the noise in any way in terms of the number of people that are actually watching the NBA Finals so far. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a number of things. LeBron is a big star. I don't think Miami's got a player like that. I think there's a lot of people that probably don't like politics at sports, so I think that's a factor. I think the time of year has something to do with it. People aren't used to watching an NBA Finals in October. This is when the season would be starting right now, not ending. So I think all those factors kind of play into it. I think it's been going. It's just not the same. I think people watching these games in the bubble, I'm sure there's some people that don't even look at it like as a legitimate championship just because it's so different. I think there's a number of factors. And, remember, Clay, time of year has something to do with it, too. Now you got football going on, even in baseball going on, college football. This isn't the time of year where people really watch basketball, dig into it that much.
If LeBron wins and the Lakers win tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, Friday, Game 5, and the series is over, how much attention does it get as we roll into college football and the NFL? Or do you think it's going to feel fairly muted? Because usually whenever the NBA Finals end, it's a big deal, right? Like in June, it's like, oh, we got a lot to discuss. What's the overall legacy impact? What's the storyline? How much do you think, because it's happening on a Friday night, and by the time people wake up on Saturday, it's like, hey, college football's kicking off, then the NFL's rolling. How much attention do you think it's actually going to occupy in the American sporting public?
Yeah, I was about to say, if it ends on Friday, it would almost have like the Friday news dump feel to it.
Yeah.
The weekend will happen, and to your point, college football, and then the NFL, and even on Monday, you'll have NFL games, and you're not going to have a parade, I don't think. I can imagine the city of L.A., because of,
Yeah, the COVID restrictions. There's no way they're going to have like a massive,
and also money. I don't think they should be spending money on something like that. I do think it'll go away pretty quickly. I think the one thing that'll keep it going on some level is people will be debating where this ranks for LeBron, because I think a lot of people will say, well, it's not the same thing because he was in a bubble, so that fourth championship now we're going to view it a lot differently. But this is the thing for the NBA. If this thing ends on a Friday night, late Friday night, think about it. So the game will be ending. If the Lakers win, it'll be close to midnight on Friday. And you have no idea when the next season is going to start. Adam Silver keeps talking about it. Christmas is a target date, but he even says that that's probably unrealistic. So the NBA could be ending tomorrow night with nobody having any idea when it's going to start again.
Yeah, it is kind of wild to think about that. And honestly, Chris Mannix on this radio program, and I think he's written this at Sports Illustrated, is saying he expects for the return to be around MLK Day. And if MLK Day is going to be the return date, that's relatively late in January. So you're not seeing the NBA return until, in theory, we're pretty far into the NFL playoffs, and we don't even know what that would look like. By the way, that they would return in late January. We're talking with Frank Isola. You can follow him on Twitter at the Frank Isola. Let's go into the NFL. Okay, so we got Brady tonight going on the road against the Bears. That's a pretty good Thursday night football game. Like, I'm fairly excited to kick my feet up, watch, and see what happens. Sometimes Thursday night football is not, necessarily the big draw. And we all know that there have been a bunch of those games over the course of time. But you got a 3-1 Bears team going up against a 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. Tom Brady coming off a 5-touchdown game. He's gotten progressively better in this Bucs offense every single week. Wasn't perfect against the Chargers, threw a pick six, but again, 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers. The Bears have made that switch from Trubisky to Foles. What do you expect to see in tonight's game, and then what letter grade would you give Brady so far?
I'd probably give him about a B+, and I think for the Bears, Foles has to play better. I thought that was kind of a quick switch.
Yank.
I get it. That Trubisky did not play well against Atlanta. They still won the game. They were 3-0. How many times have you seen a quarterback change when a team is 3-0? And what's interesting about it too, I've always said this about the NFL and all these young quarterbacks. I just don't see anything wrong with subbing in for a quarterback. I know people say, you can't do that all the time. But for a young guy like Trubisky, he's going poorly. You bring Nick Foles in. He leads you to victory. Now everyone thinks, well, it's the Nick Foles era. How poor did Nick Foles play last week? He was really bad. And I think tonight he's going to have to keep up with Tom Brady because Tampa is going to put points on the board. And if he can't keep up with him, now he kept up with him in the Super Bowl. I know that. That was like a different situation. But I think Brady, for the most part, has been. I think he's been pretty good. It's weird, right? I think the story's kind of floated under the radar a little bit, maybe because they didn't have any preseason games. So, it's still kind of like Tom Brady's not in New England anymore. He's in Tampa, and it doesn't seem like it's still getting the attention I thought it would.
How would you assess the divorce, by the way? Now with the Patriots, what I like to call the divorce. Belichick sitting at 2-2. Maybe not fair to even judge the Patriots hardly in Game 4 because they had to trot out Brian Hoyer, and Hoyer didn't play well, and they're going up against the defending Super Bowl champs. But right now, I think Brady looks better than Belichick does in the post in the breakup. Right? Like he seems to be winning the divorce more.
Yeah, and I think the Patriots have had 2 tough results. Right? The Seattle game was tough because they had a chance there at the end when Cam. I don't know about that final play when Cam got stopped at the goal line, and then on Monday night. Listen, you and I talk about this all the time with Mahomes. I still think Mahomes would have figured out a way to win the game. But, Hoyer was terrible in the first half. The play at the end of the first half was, I'm not even going to put that on Belichick or the offensive coordinator. You cannot allow yourself to get sacked. And then how about all the mistakes? The 2 interceptions that they had in their hands, which led to 10 points. And then you had that bad call. There were a bunch of bad calls.
Yeah.
The pass interference call that they gave to Travis Kelce was ridiculous. And then Mahomes flopped on that one play when he was running out of bounds, and they threw the flag. So New England, if I'm Bill Belichick, I got up in the morning and we flew to Kansas City to play a game. I'm going up against the Super Bowl champs and Mahomes, and I was like the refs conspiring against me in that game. So even at this point, with everything that's happened, I'd even give Belichick about maybe not a B+, probably a B. I'd still give Brady a better grade.
We're talking to Frank Isola. So how do you handle going forward? We have, and we'll see what happens this morning, whether there's any more positives. But you got Stephon Gilmore, best defensive player for the Patriots, testing positive. We already know that that Cam Newton, got everybody terrified there. Cam Newton has tested positive, best offensive player. The Titans have the continuing drip of positives. The first game that the Titans would have had to play against the Steelers has been able to be reorganized based on the bye week. What would you do if you were NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell going forward? Would you add weeks to the NFL regular season? Would you acknowledge that some teams may not play 16? Or would you consider forfeits being required for teams that don't have full rosters and are not able to enter their facilities and play? How should the NFL handle this going forward?
I think you could add probably one more week to get at least one game in, and then after that, you're just going to have a situation, much like baseball, where you didn't have every team playing 60 games. I think the NFL had to have known this. That's why, Clay, when they came out with that thing about the fines, where if you're not, meeting the proper protocols, there's a chance that teams could face some heavy fines because they want to complete the season. And I still say, you and I talked about it when baseball first started, they had a bunch of positive tests, and people think it's never going to happen.
That's right.
They're going to be able to pull this off. So I think it's almost like a wake-up call for the NFL. Like the players, they have to be a little bit more responsible if they want to be able to do it. And remember, too, All right, so Cam Newton didn't play the other night, so that basically went down as a guy suffering from the flu.
Yeah.
There's no other way to look at it. And we've seen this before over the course of an NFL season where teams have had kind of the outbreak of something. Could be a stomach virus sometimes, and they haven't been able to play. But if I'm the NFL, I'm maybe going to add a week, and then after that, there's going to be a chance. You just have to base it on winning percentage, and because you got the goal now is to try to complete this season.
Speaking of completing the season, have we underrated how impressive it is that Major League Baseball actually got their season in? Because you mentioned it, and I do think it's important. If you went back in time to July, when all of a sudden all those Marlins tested positive, I think if you had taken a poll of certainly people in our industry of sports media, but the fans in general that were at least being active on social media, there would have been almost no belief that there was going to be any way at all for Major League Baseball to finish their season. And not only they finished their season, they're having a pretty entertaining postseason. They brought in 16 teams into the playoffs. We're down to 8. We're about to be down to 4 teams remaining. And it seems like, knock on wood, they basically solved every issue, and they're going to be able to have a relatively normal, it seems like, particularly NLCS and World Series, where there will actually be crowds present.
Yeah, and the playoffs have been fun. You know, right before opening day, you had the defending World Series champions, the Washington Nationals, and their player Juan Soto, who
That's
was
right.
one of the young, most exciting players, was terrific in the World Series, hit some huge home runs against both the Dodgers and the Astros, and he had come down testing positive, and it really was the sky is falling. No way Major League Baseball is going to be able to pull this off with a bubble. Now, they are using, in theory, a bubble for the playoffs and for the World Series, but they did make it through the season. And again, I think that was the wake-up call for baseball, because I think, if you want to get paid, you want to play, you want to somehow get this done, the players are going to have to, follow the rules. And I think going out has a lot to do with it. First of all, there's not really many places you can go out. Not like there's a lot of bars open. But when you're putting baseball players on the road, it's not like the NFL. I mean, think about it, Clay. The Patriots flew in, flew out. You talk about a business trip. That was one that they had on Monday night. Baseball, it was a little bit different during the season. They're in cities for 2 and 3 days.
That's right.
And that was going to be more complicated. That's why it's weird. They're not getting enough credit. I think they do deserve a lot more credit for what they did.
Frank Isola, enjoy the games this weekend. We will talk to you next week. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Clay.
That's at the Frank Isola on Twitter. You can find him there. We come back. I think Danny G has got some 5-star reviews for you. At least I believe so.